Education Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. We're going to start this evening with our agenda. Under general business, Stacy, could you verify that this meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has been.
Thank you very much. Next, under general business, opportunity for any citizens to address this committee. Do we have anyone in the audience this evening that would like to do so? Okay, see none. We have a Bright Lights presentation tonight from Meadowbrook Elementary School. We have Mrs. Berry here, the principal at Meadowbrook, to introduce staff and students, and we look forward to hearing about AVID at Meadowbrook. So welcome to all of you. Please step forward.
Good evening. It's on. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Berry, and I'm the principal at Meadowbrook Elementary School. And I have some wonderful students and teachers here tonight to talk to you about our AVID implementation. We were selected to start AVID this past school year, so we are in year one, and it's ever so exciting, and we're going to tell you a little bit about how that's going at Meadowbrook. I have Ella in grade 4. I have Uriah in grade 4. I have Sal in grade 4. I have Rochelle Feger, who came to us new this year at Meadowbrook teaching grade 4. And I have Erica Mauer-Sickler, who is in 2nd grade. And so when we were given the opportunity to roll out AVID at Meadowbrook, we selected grades 2 through grade 5. So it was a bit of a lofty endeavor, but nothing that we can't accomplish. So I'm going to turn it over to my friends.
So as Mrs. Berry said, we had the opportunity to go to the Summer Institute and have a lot of learning happening around AVID. And so our team, when we came back ready to Wickerize everything. And where to begin was our starting point. And we started with organization and focused note-taking. And what's been really great is, besides having the Summer Institute, we've had other opportunities to see AVID in action. We've gone to the school district of Mequon, Elkhorn, and what's great about those opportunities is we can see it in the classroom with the students. We can ask questions of the teachers and students, and then we can come back and try and implement those strategies within our classroom. And so we've been taking a lot of time as a staff trying to look at how we can use those strategies, embed them in what we're already doing, and become an AVID school.
With being with implementing 2 through 5, we saw the power not only in us having the information, but also sharing kind of the wealth with the rest of our staff and including the learning that we're having within our site-based PD that we do at our school. So that way, not only the 2nd through 5th grade teachers are getting access to that learning, but also the kindergarten and 1st grader teachers, as well as other specialists, have access to different AVID strategies that they can try in their classroom. And then as we're trying new things, it's great to try them out with staff. Did we like this? How did it go? And then be able to bring back some of those strategies into our class.
AVID has impacted students by organization and using focused notes. At Meadowbrook Elementary, we use AVID. AVID has impacted students all throughout Meadowbrook. For example, this is Addie taking 3-column notes in math. Delaney is using her 3-column notes to create a geometric town.
This is me looking back at my focus notes to try and remember different angles to put in my geometric town map. Students were in 2nd grade. This is how students collaborate with working together and working on carousel brainstorming and background knowledge on colonial times. It has impacted students by using focus notes. For example, this student is using the carousel brainstorming questions to focus their research on colonial times. It has also impacted students by making them apply learning. Students will be using their notes to create a one-pager of what they learned. It has had students get more organized. For example, we use calendars to organize and schedule our time. Our binders help us organize what we need. Our 3-column notes helped us to organize our thinking about decimals. Are different quotes from kids that think about Avid. Connor in 2nd grade said, "School isn't boring. When I write, I get to do something with it later and share my ideas with other people." Jasper in 3rd grade said, 2-column notes are more organized and make me understand my thinking better. They also make it easier to look back and find the information I need. Mackenzie in 5th grade said, "Avid strategies help me remember and process my learning." Hunter in 4th grade said, "Avid strategies have helped me mature."
Levi in 2nd grade said, "I can learn from other people. My mind is able to focus better on learning." Sal in 4th grade said, "Avid has increased my learning. I like being able to work with partners and different people." Annika in 5th grade said, "Avid helps me keep my things organized." And Cole in 3rd grade said, "One-pagers help me to visualize my thoughts and understand better."
Do you have any questions?
Mr. Baumgart.
Sure. I was warned not to ask a question that you didn't understand, so I guess I have to ask you guys. No, you used the term several times in there, carousel.
Brainstorming.
What was it, Carol?
Carousel
Brainstorming. Can you help?
I'll take over that. So that was something that we tried in 2nd grade. And so the 2nd graders were learning about colonial times, and it was their first time that they had ever been exposed to that content. And so we put around the classroom different pictures for the students to look at. So pictures of colonial homes, pictures of colonial schools. And the students got together in groups of 3 to 5 students. And together they brainstormed, like, what do you notice? What questions do you have? And then they went around the classroom. So they rotated around so that they had opportunities to look at what other people had written down,
Okay.
And say, "Oh yeah, I agree. I have that same question," or "I had that same thought," or to add to the learning. And then they took that carousel brainstorming and they used the questions that they had to help them then with their research when they were researching about colonial homes or schools.
And if I got that right, they were communicating with each other, student-wise, not just with the teachers.
Yes. Yep. So it was very student-led
Wonderful.
discussions when they were going around.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien.
So I'm wondering, which courses did you tend to apply the 2-column note and the 3-column note with? Was it writing, or was it math, or was it science?
We
Or?
did it in all, actually. So for ours, like for our 2-column notes, we put like questions and answers, and after we found what the question was, then we put it there, and then we'd have to find the answer, and then we put it on that part.
So I'm thinking about how you could use a 3-column note. So if I was going to write like a TV show or a movie screen, I could draw a picture, and then I could talk about it, and then I could write the script. So there'd be something like that, huh?
Yeah.
Or I could write the script and draw the picture
Yeah.
and put it in different columns and do that and do a whole movie like that. Okay.
Ms. Roddy.
So I had a very similar question because I kept writing down 3-column notes. I like to write notes. I feel like it helps me remember, but they're always scattered. How does the 3-column notes help you? How can I use that?
It like
Okay, so 3-column notes, you have different categories for the notes, and so in each category there's something different. So say you're doing math and you want to put like the name of like something and then what it looks like, then the description of it. So then you are more organized with what you like want to learn, and if you want to look back at those notes, you know what it's talking about.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, in like writing, we would write like a piece of a text, and then we would like what it means and like what it means to us.
Thank you.
Mr. Como.
Thank you. First of all, you guys are very expressive. You're doing very well. You present yourself in a well-organized manner, and I'm glad you're prepared for tonight. I have a question for you. If you could go back to the old way of doing things or use the things in Avid, which would you choose and why?
I would choose the new way because it helps me get more work done and think of more ideas for that project.
It also makes learning more fun.
Ah,
Yeah, I agree with them. It like makes learning more fun. It makes more work be done and the work be neater and better.
well, thank you for your honest answers there. That was a tough question, and you guys did a good job, so thank you on that. I saw some nervousness by some of the adults in the audience.
Well, and the parents are laughing too. I think, like, for us, it's just been an exciting year. We've seen like 100% engagement with our teachers and enthusiasm, and that's carried over to our students. And the main thing I hear about is the organization. And the idea that the binder is really keeping track of all of their loose papers. We have definitely seen a decrease in missing assignments, and so that's just one part of it. But we have work to do. The focus note-taking undertaking is not something that we can tackle all in one year. We're just kind of getting our feet wet right now, but what's so fun is having the kids be able to use those notes and go back and add to them and reflect upon them, and that's really exciting for all of us.
Well, it's a process as you introduce a new program to a school, and you'll hopefully gain momentum over time. And
We have 100% of our grades 2 through 5 teachers, as well as our coaches and special ed teachers, being versed in Avid, so taking advantage of Summer Institute in Minneapolis, as well as what Waukesha is offering in August. So that speaks to itself.
thank you.
Mrs. Berry, does Avid Strategies at all transfer over into art, music at Fried or any of the specials?
The teachers
Areas.
are definitely exposed to it, and right now, so using the pieces, the goals that we have set with organization and focus notes, yes, those teachers can use that, but like Erica had mentioned, we are making sure that during our professional development that we're taking the strategies that we're learning off-site and even around the district and bringing those to everybody so that they can have some ideas of how to get kids talking, how to get kids working together, and a plethora of strategies. It's really good teaching boxed up into a nice Avid bow.
I would assume that paraprofessionals are well aware of those strategies as well.
The paraprofessionals have not been versed in any professional development around Avid, but we do have plans to make sure that Avid is part of communication, weekly communication, and that is something that everybody reads in our building.
But they see those in practice,
They're
obviously,
seeing them
their
in
classroom.
practice.
Yep, okay.
I wouldn't say that they're leading them at this point, but our hope is to really build that
Awesome.
momentum for next year.
Very good. Any other comments or questions?
Great. Just real quick.
Mr.
So
Brown?
I think of the 3 students here as like 3 different columns, right? You know, column A, B, and C. And one would start, and then if they struggled in that column, they'd pass it over to the other column. And then the one middle would just say, I agree, and then that all kind of worked
It
out.
works. It works.
Yeah.
They're absolutely perfect, aren't they?
Yes, pretty
Yeah.
much. 3 perfect columns.
They're pretty awesome. Very brave.
Well, keep up the great work at Meadowbrook Elementary School. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing your AVID strategies, and good luck as you continue to roll out this awesome program that's
Thank you.
in our district. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Next this evening, we move into our action item section. We have one action item this evening, and the item is approval of the Teaching and Learning Committee minutes from our February 4th meeting that was held last month. Looking for any corrections or discussion?
I move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgart.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes from February 4th? Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we have one abstaining. Yep. Passes 4-0, Stacy, one abstention. Okay. Next this evening, we're moving on to our discussion information items. We start out with a presentation on elementary phonics word study. We have Melissa Yao, Director of Elementary Learning, here with us this evening, as well as her team of educators that are going to be reviewing phonics in our district. So welcome, Melissa, and your team, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
This is, as indicated in the notes I have in front of me, it's going to be a 3-part series of information, and we're going to begin with that this evening, so thank you.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I am here along with Emily Reddy and Courtney Konechka, 2 of our literacy coaches at the elementary level in Waukesha. And we are going to be talking tonight about elementary word study and where we are at in the curriculum design process and our need for looking again at our resources to best serve our students. In the School District of Waukesha, we use the comprehensive literacy model. And in that model, the foundation, the trapezoid there that you see at the bottom, language foundation is lifting up our other practices. And in that bottom, you would see those foundations such as phonics word study, interactive reading, shared reading, and writing, where you begin to really learn how words work. And from that, you move into language workshop that branches off into writing, reading, and content workshop. So here is another visual that just really explains how everything works together to build reading comprehension. In the yellow boxes, that is phonics word study. In phonics, you have phonological awareness, concepts of print, decoding sight words, fluency in text, and then working on automatic words. We usually refer to those as sight words. So what is in yellow, we really want students to have a strong foundation of before they move out of elementary. And so that's one of the reasons why having a phonics word study a part of the overall comprehensive model is so important. And we have found we need to look again at our system and kind of beef up what we are doing. So there are research around phonics instruction, what are essentials for that instruction. And we know research tells us that it needs to be systematic and explicit. And systematic means that we need to move from easy to more complex skills. And so that's why we really need to look at a system that would work from kindergarten to 5th grade and build upon each other. Also, it needs to be explicit. And so we need to have time where we're directly teaching the concepts to the students. So the first years, as I said, in elementary school are really important for building this knowledge for students, and that's why we really need to provide a great foundation of resources and instruction for our students. There are also standards that we have in the Wisconsin State Standards that are our standards that we follow in the school district of Waukesha that are in the foundation skills of reading that we teach. We also want phonics instruction to work towards teaching mastery than just exposure. There has been time where we have just exposed students to concepts, and we have been studying, and we really want to make sure that we have a program and resource that helps us get students to mastery so that it's not just a one and done. When you were in school, it might have been like when I was in school. I would go through a week, I would study a list of words, I would spell them not very well on Friday, even though I memorized them quite a bit, but I wouldn't be able to continue to apply them. We need something that's not just one and done, but where students are being exposed over and over again into mastery, where they will then be using it and applying it into reading and writing. So that next bullet tells us that then we need to be doing that through explicit application exercises. So we also need to be using a gradual release, so where we have that explicit instruction where the teacher models, then we practice together, and then students are practicing it on their own in various situations. We need to make sure for phonics instruction that students are having time to blend, that there is dictation, that there is word awareness and high frequency as a part of the phonics instruction. So a little bit of the history in the school district of Waukesha. So prior to the 2008-2009, programs like Sitten and Scott Forsman were used. In 2009-2010, Fontes and Pinnell was adopted and K through third grade as the word study. In 2011 and 12, there was a pilot at the 4-5 of Words Their Way. It was not adopted. And then in 15-16, we created some word study units that have been put in place for 4-5. So that's where we are currently at and some of the history. So the process that has been taking place. So over the past year and a half, we have been doing a lot of learning, relearning around phonics. And so the literacy coaches have been doing multiple book studies around phonics. We've been doing our research. We've been attending many conferences around phonics. We've been doing learning with our principals and our teachers in Summer Institute. We have also looked into what some other districts are doing as phonics instruction. We found that most districts are in the same place that we are. They're under review and looking at what they're currently doing and looking to see where they might be going and doing some pilots as well. But some things that are out there are Words Their Way, Calkins Phonics, Mundo is happening in Madison, and we have some other districts, 2 other districts that are also piloting the Benchmark Phonics Word Study Series like we are. So in our process, some things that we are looking for through the program is we wanted to find a resource that would help with the explicit teaching of phonics. We also wanted to make sure that in that program there is teaching to transfer and application. So we want to make sure as students are having those repetition of practice that it transfers over into their reading and writing. So there needs to be in that practice a connection also to reading and writing. We also wanted to try and find something that might have a technology component, a resource that will help students with that practice that incorporates the technology that we are lucky to have here in the school district. We also wanted to make sure that whatever we have has a home school connection that works with connecting families, that gives time to practice, that helps assist families to know what's going on and what they can be doing to support at home. We also looked at the amount of prep for teachers. That's one thing from feedback that we've gotten from teachers is our current system of what we have, there's an awful lot of prep time, and so we want to make sure to be aware of that and how much time something is going to take for them. Also, we wanted to look for something that has a scope and sequence across K-5. So currently, we are in a word study pilot. So we have our current resources there on the left, the Fontes and Pinnell word study and our units at 4-5. And then we are in a pilot with the benchmark Phonics word study workshop. And so we are piloting right now at Whittier and Hillcrest. So we wanted to pick two different diverse schools. And we are piloting at 1st, 3rd, and 5th grade so that we could get a range of the programs and how they build upon one another. Our next steps. So in April, we will be coming to you again. We will have maybe some other coaches, maybe some principals, but we'll definitely have some teachers that are part of the pilot. And we'll be coming to you talking more about the survey and pilot results that we have, the cost, and including the PD plan from our findings of how we would move forward. And then in May, we would be coming back seeking approval for whichever system we find that we're going to recommend to go with. So I want to leave with this thought that and we're referring to phonics, is not just something that's extra, it's an integral part to a strong literacy program. So, questions?
Mr. Baumgart.
If you go back long enough, and I can go back further than anybody else in this room, so. Phonics has been one of these, right?
It has been.
Up and
yes.
down and up and down. Are we on the up cycle now? Is that what's going on?
Well, phonics is an integral part, and if we go back to the
Agree with that,
very
but
first
it disappeared
screen, but it has disappeared, and we want to make sure that it's in there, that it's explicit, that it's happening daily for our learners. And so looking at where we currently are at, we feel that we need to make some adjustments for our learners.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I want to hear.
Yep.
Because, again, it disappeared for a while, and I don't think it did us a lot of good by doing that.
And that's one of the reasons why when we move towards the comprehensive literacy model, being a comprehensive approach, as you saw, phonics has been that base, and it's all encompassing. And we've worked on language workshop, we've worked on our writing units, we've worked on our reading workshop units, and phonics is kind of one of those last pieces that we need to make sure is in place. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bryan.
So I shared a little book with Dr. Gray and Miss Landish, and they have a little section on phonics in there. Mm-hmm. And I just think of my own experiences and my own children as well. I can never think of a time where they told me they didn't have enough phonics. You know, and I remember having phonics not quite as far back as Mr. Baumgart, and it wasn't my most favorite textbook, mm-hmm. right? And it wasn't that I knew I needed a little bit, right? It's important for spelling and word structure and a lot of different things and understanding. But most of my reading was, well, for me, it was just easy. So it wasn't really, phonics wasn't my favorite textbook. Mm-hmm. And when I look at the battle between phonics and whole language doesn't necessarily exclude phonics. Usually phonics is a component of whole language. And I think people misunderstand that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can stop there.
So, you know,
Whether they've misunderstood it or it's been left out, that's true.
well, there is phonics, but you don't teach reading without some phonics. But the idea that it's going to be a panacea for a solution for our reading, I think you learn to read by reading, and the more parents read with their children, the better they come to school prepared to read. And it's just like you learn math by doing math, you learn writing by doing writing. Phonics is just one of those tools. So it'll be interesting to see what you're coming up with, but there's always this battle between how do you teach reading and how much emphasis do you put on phonics. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that we don't go to the point where we think phonics is an answer for our reading stuff when maybe the answer is we need to have children return to the idea that reading is fun, and that's the way you actually learn about the world and learn about everything that you don't know is through reading.
Right. And
So I think that's the real thing, the excitement of reading. I learned to read with comic books that I bought for a roll of comic books of 50, and I guessed at the words so I could, my column was the picture in the comic book, and then another column was the words and all that. So it wasn't phonics that taught me to read. That's all I can say.
And it's, being the comprehensive model, it's not, one thing is not more important than the other. And what we found through all of our research too, backing that up, is that it has to be explicit, but being explicit, you have to tie it to reading and writing. And so and vetting all the different resources that are out there, the one that we are piloting, we did look to see what is fun. And Courtney and Emily are here as two of the coaches working in the buildings with the pilot. And I don't know if the two of you want to share just a brief for tonight about some of that.
Sure they do.
I could too, yeah.
We have, this is our third week of implementing the pilot, and I had the opportunity to teach a lesson in every one of the classrooms that taught phonics, as did Emily. But last week I did that, and it was really funny because after I taught it, every single time those kids saw me in the hallway, they were like, "When are you coming back to teach us more phonics? Are you coming back today? When are you coming back? When are we going to do this again?" So they were like begging for more. And I actually heard feedback from my 5th grade teacher, and she, like Melissa said, she'll share more as we do more. But she said to me at the beginning, she said, "I was worried that the kids would think that this was too babyish, or I was worried that they wouldn't be engaged." But she says they are loving this time, and they love kind of analyzing the words, and they love sorting the words. And then there is a component of real reading in the student books that they really have enjoyed as well. And she even shared a time they were reading about the remora and how it has a relationship with the other animals in the sea. And she's like, yeah, it sparked other inquiry. They had to go and look more about this animal. And another student was saying, "Oh yeah, I looked and read more about that, Mrs. Schreiber." So I think it's really currently been a lot of fun for the kids, and they are engaged and excited to do it at Hillcrest.
And I was going to add too that it's a 15 to 20 minute chunk of the day, and it's really fast paced, which makes a lot of it feel like a game to the kids. And so I was teaching in a 5th grade room the other day and watching these kids be so competitive with their letter cards to build the high frequency words as fast as they could. And their teacher was saying that he sees them now talking about that in writing, about how they learned that already. And so that's really our goal, and one of the non-negotiables for us in previewing materials was we had to see that connection, and it had to be that quick explicit part, so then they could get to the real work of reading and writing.
Mr. Como.
So you started 3 weeks ago. When does the pilot end again?
The pilot will end in 3 weeks, right before spring break.
Okay, so a total of 6 weeks.
Yes.
And could you provide some examples of the home school connections, what that looks like?
Well, one of the things at the very bottom of this slide, you can see it's
The frog.
where the frog is. So each unit in the primary grades has a booklet like that, and so that's the student booklet. And during the unit, they keep that in their book box. And another thing we've seen during reading is that kids are loving to read because all of the shared reading materials and poems that they use are in there. So kids are rereading those a lot. But at the end,
At home? Taking those home and...
during the unit, it stays with them, and then when the unit's 3 weeks long, and when the unit is over, it goes home. But at the back, there is a whole homeschool component that gives families lots of activities they can do with that, with the poems and stories that are in that book, but also games that they can play along with the focus.
So how have you communicated with parents on how to go about doing this or participating in this?
Right now, the first unit ends this week, so the booklet will be going home for the first time.
Okay.
So that
So you haven't gotten
communication-
through that yet?
Yeah, so
Okay,
that
that's
communication will be going home. But judging by how excited the kids are with those books in class, I'm hoping that carries over to wanting to share with their family.
Sure. I just didn't know if there was a formal way that you're reaching out to the parents. I think it's good that the kids are bringing it home and you want them to be excited and for them to share. But I didn't know if you're giving a heads up to the parents saying, hey, look for this, or maybe ask them about this when they get home, or something along those lines. But I'll let you guys keep going through the pilot. I was just more curious on that. And I know, again, you're only 3 weeks into it, but have you run into any challenges as coaches that, you didn't anticipate and you need to kind of work through a little bit here?
I think one thing that we're seeing is just the need for continuing teacher development in phonics knowledge. Some of us didn't all learn phonics in the ways that we know it needs to be taught, and so knowing exactly the difference between a closed syllable and an open syllable and what that means is learning that we're going through as we're going through the pilot, things that we are figuring out we need to be really solid in to support students in that work.
Sure, and that'll help you as you move further down to figure out what the PDE looks like, so on and so forth. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. O'Brien.
So what's the anticipated grade level sequence for this phonics course development at the elementary level? Where does it start? How much depth is covered in these grades as it goes through the system?
So it is a K-5 system that builds upon each other through the standards of development. It takes in kindergarten through second grade, it's suggested to be daily about 15 minutes a day. And then there are some additional lessons that if you have students who are needing more support, that you can use that. One of the things that within this particular program that we're finding is that really aligns well to students who are in guided reading, because a part of guided reading is having some of that time working on things that would fall under the umbrella and practice of phonics. And so it relates and ties there, and teachers will be able to use that to help support that. And then as it builds up to 3, 4, and 5, it goes into some repeated readings and fluency practice where you are applying those phonics skills, a little bit of relating it to grammar practices as well, which helps just beef up our grammar units that were introduced last year through patterns of power.
So I guess the question I have is, by grade 2, you'd anticipate a large portion of the academic group, say 70 to 80% of them having 90% of the capability phonics-wise, and then you're just reinforcing those skills in grades 3, 4, and 5.
It gets reinforced, but there are, it does get more complex as it goes on. But one of the things that we have found through the research is that we, not often enough at the younger grades, do we make phonics complex enough. So we usually just stick to monosyllabic words instead of multisyllabic words, and we really need to be introducing those sooner to our students. When it gets to grades 3, 4, and 5, the suggestion is that it can be 5 days a week, but you really, to guarantee for it to still be viable, would be 3 days a week, with 2 days a week being for students who might need more support or more practice. So we're anticipating that our first couple of years, as students are building some of these skills, that our first couple of years we might need to do 5 days a week, and then as students have been in the program developing the skills, we might be able to move to 3 days a week. So those are some different pieces we're looking at. We're also looking at how will we roll this out? Will we roll out from the very beginning, K-5, or do we need to do K-2 and then the following year 3-5, or what sequence we will do? Because we want to make sure that we're able to fully support our teachers in the new learning, or if we continue with what we're doing, how we're going to beef up and come back to some new learning and application.
I think the nice thing about the 3-5 too is we've only seen first grade, but we've seen third grade and fifth grade, is that the routines within those lessons are the same from week to week, from unit to unit, and then they're the same from third grade, and then obviously would be in fourth grade and fifth grade. So once the students learn these routines of fluent word reading, and then they read text within, application, and then they do dictation. All these routines are going to be the same. So adopting at K-5 would allow the students to already have those routines in place. I also think it's nice that when you look at those little booklets again on the bottom, the units match K-5 as well. So like plants and animals is unit 1 in grade 1, 2, 3, all the way up. So kind of K-5, they're getting those same kinds of themes as well, which is nice to have multiple exposures for that.
Mr. Baumgart.
One of the things you said I found quite exciting when you talked about getting them together in the classroom, and it's about a 15-minute period. And they are seeing that as a game. They're seeing it as exciting. They're seeing it as competitive. You talked about teaching phonics the right way. Well, that's different than the way the ladies in the black dresses would work out. Pronounce TH the whole room. So I really am impressed with the fact that you're making this interesting for the kids, which will engage them much more than having them sit in rows and just,
Yeah, and a lot of our research has talked about one of the problems with phonics instruction typically is that the teacher does all the heavy lifting and then the kids just parrot it back to them, and then that learning doesn't happen. And so one of the big focuses with this program is here are a few explicit models, and now the kids do the work, and then the teacher comes back in and models again if they see necessary, but gives the kids the opportunity to really be doing that thinking and the learning.
Mr. Bryan.
So compared to what I had, I've had 2 years of working first and second grade. I didn't have K4 or K5. So we have in our system, we generally have children K4, K5, first and second. And children learn at different rates. So if we were to teach phonics as a core goal to have most of it completed by second grade, there'd be a lot of children that wouldn't be able to do that. It takes them longer. So we'd have to continue to run phonics for those children through third, fourth, and fifth grade. Maybe other kids would have been more fully developed by second grade. So, kids learn at different paces and stuff like that. I'm not anti-phonics. I'm a phonetic reader. I've always been a phonetic reader. I couldn't identify the word 8 because it wasn't phonetically proper, and I could never spell onion because that wasn't phonetically proper. But I do think that the emphasis for the district should be a good, strong phonics foundation in those early grade levels, and then building upon that through 3, 4, and 5 as needed for.
Research is showing that it really should be K-5 as it gets more complex. And, what they're doing is different. It applies more to reading and writing as you go along, and also being very developmentally appropriate in how it's applying to reading and writing at the younger grades with things such as interactive writing, shared reading, where they have big books, repeated text. So what we're hoping to see is that by going K-5 sequentially, systematically, that increasing this one area in addition to all other areas, writing is not more important than reading, and reading is not more important than writing, and phonics, the same way that you need all of it to really become a master of reading. So.
Melissa, could you or anyone on your team talk to me a little bit about any progress monitoring or data collection that you've done or will be doing?
Sure. So we currently use the PALS system for looking at those early indicators that relate to the big umbrella of phonological phonemic awareness, phonics. And so we have looked at that data over time, as well as the last couple years, been collecting practice data about the amount of time that is or is not happening with our current resource, and also survey information from students, teachers, about what is happening and what the need that they see.
Good. Mr. Bryan.
Did any of your research studies cover how other languages are taught in phonics, like Chinese? They don't have a phonetic structure to it, really. And, or maybe, I'm not sure, I don't read Chinese, but,
Right.
you know.
No, I just
Because I think
did the
this is an
research
American
around-
thing, our emphasis
Well,
on
the one thing
phonics.
that I thought was really interesting when we studied our book study and we had a Zoom session with Wiley Blevins, who was one of the writers of Benchmark, was like, one of his quotes that stuck with me still is like, I think it's 84 to 87% of words in the English language are actually follow a consistent sound spelling pattern. So, I think the rumor is that like, oh, well, English language is so unique that you really can't study patterns. But what he's saying is you can. And that when you study these patterns, then they help you when you're learning to read in kindergarten and first grade, but then also you can apply those patterns to those bigger multisyllabic words, and how when you're developing those patterns, you're actually developing the side of the brain that research has shown is more useful when we're decoding text or when we're reading than the opposite side. So I thought that statistic was super interesting, because I think, like Emily said, when new teachers or young teachers are going through, or just, us in society, it's like the English language is not predictable, when really it's a lot more predictable. And he used the quote, like, if I said you have an 87% chance of winning the lottery, would you buy a ticket? And we're all like, yeah. And he's like, well, exactly why we need to incorporate this phonics work into our programs.
Mr. Bryan.
So I guess the point you're trying to make there is that English is a phonetic language.
I think it's more phonetic than it's the rumored to be. Yeah.
So the point you're trying to make is that English is a phonetic language, so phonics should be very much a part of
a part.
curriculum. So versus comparing it to other languages where phonics is not part of those other languages, possibly. With our language where phonics is a big part of it, that's what we should have as part of our.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else? So you'll be back next month?
We'll be back the next 2 months, so.
It's okay. We'll deal with it.
Good. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
think of some harder questions next time.
Start, yeah.
No need, you don't have to do any homework.
Thank you. Our next discussion information item is Redefining Ready benchmarks. And we have team here this evening to help go through that with us. Molly Hobbenschild is the current and technical education coordinator, and Amy Riebel is our district data coordinator, here to present the information to us this evening and answer any questions that we have. So welcome.
Good evening.
Yep, and actually, I'm going to start this evening here. So, first for the board, I want to bring to your attention the School District of Waukesha Student Achievement Goals, the one-pager that is in front of you. As you recall, the first few months of our teaching and learning meetings this year, we've really brought to you a lot of data around student achievement indicators, okay? The forward, the ACT, advanced placement, et cetera. And so a lot of our goals are academic and student achievement related. However, there is a sort of a right side of the document, if you will, that talks about what it means in our mission statement to be not only college ready, but community and career ready as well. And so we wanted to take the opportunity this month to talk more about the Redefining Ready indicators and give you some baseline data around our career ready celebrations. So with that said, just a reminder about Redefining Ready. I would say we're going on about 10 years worth of sort of implementation and research around Redefining Ready. The partners listed there for you include some big names around the College Board, Harvard, maybe partnerships that you're used to. These are research partners that got together to develop this body of research. I guess just to stay on a very general level, too, to remind you of, is that our Superintendent's State Association really had a consortium within the last 2-3 years to come up again with some common Redefining Ready indicators. And every school district, I would say, has massaged and used those in different ways. So if you see, these are the career ready indicators of which we have defined, and thanks to some great data mining by Amy, Molly, and Dan, are actually able to come up with some concrete baseline indicators in these areas that we'll present for you today.
You're going to change a different slide now? Because I got a
Would you
question on
like-
this slide.
Go for it.
As this was put together, were these the people that helped put it together?
Correct.
It amazes me that 90% attendance is adequate. Do you know how many days of work you would miss in the course of a year with 90%, with 10%? Something like 20 days of work you're not going to be at work. The employer I worked for most years with, it was 2.5% was the limit. So I mean, if that's what they're going to go with, help the kids understand that's probably not going to make it. You're going to lose your job.
Sure.
With a 10% absence rate, unless you're building in vacation and stuff into that. I don't know. So that's a question I had. Then just one more. I think when you're talking about 25 hours of community service, and now you're going to relate to the kids meeting that. Is that 24 hours based on, in the course of a year, as an employee, you would hopefully be able to work 25 hours in the course of a year?
Well, this is a general hour over a course of in essence, a high school kid's self-reported year.
It is 25 hours for
over
a
4
student.
years.
Okay.
Over a 4-year period during their high school career.
Over a 4 years. Oh, okay. I just want to get an idea how intense some of these numbers were.
Yeah.
Because you're not near, as a later slide showed, we're not making some of those.
Okay. Right.
Just a real quick comment on the 90%. I mean, if a child is reaching 90%, they're probably getting 98. And a child that's not reaching 90% is probably getting far less than 90%.
Either, right.
So 90% to me is kind of like it's one of those things that if you jump that hurdle, you're way over that hurdle, and if you're not at that hurdle, you're way behind it. So I think it's a good centerline number, but it's not really a target. I mean,
Sure. I guess I also will comment that this was the board's first attempt, right, as a draft, to come up with some career-ready indicators. So I think it's a valuable conversation to have as we move forward. And, we're always looking to engage the board and others around what this really means for kids and what best can meet our needs in the community, certainly.
Yeah, I would say also as we start, sorry. There we go. Just before we jump into the data, I think one other thing to remember about these different pieces is that there are going to be some of these that it won't make sense for it to be 100%. There are many options for kids, and all kids can't do everything. So I know we are always looking to see how high we can get some of those numbers. Some of these are going to be lower just naturally because of the different programs offered. So just something to keep in mind. All right.
Yeah, we don't need to really go over this. This just gives you kind of a one-liner in each of the areas, right? So, Bill, you were saying the 90% attendance, kind of asking about that. Research supports that attendance is 8 times more predictive of course failure in the freshman year, right? So these are some statistics as you go. The community service piece, research will support that civically engaged Students make greater scholastic progress during high school and subsequently acquire higher levels of education. So these are kind of just, there was a research article in your slide deck that's like 68 some pages long. So we just tried to pull some general statements that would allow you to have a broader perspective of what some of these indicators mean.
I liked that you put that together.
Okay. Again, workplace learning experience, which Molly will dig into, getting students out of the classroom, right out of those four walls, and giving them real world experience so they can engage in the entire sort of work learning process. Our industry credential and dual credit career pathway courses were always above and beyond our neighboring districts. This is a proud pillar in the district of Waukesha. Students and families are earning well over $350,000 in tuition annually, and that number just continues to increase as the potential around our students increases. And then the co-curricular piece is always an interesting conversation. We have set forth that we'd like to see students engaged in 2 or more organized co-curricular activities, and we know that this would help promote just overall achievement and engagement and ownership sort of attitude and belief, self-efficacy for our students. So these are some of the things that Molly and Amy will be digging into in terms of this is the first time we'll give you some baseline numbers to look at.
So where are we on school start times? Because when I think of attendance, it's doing good for a child to attend if they're not ready to learn. And we talked about studying school start times in terms of student achievement, especially at the secondary level. Is that still an ongoing program that we're looking at? And how far away are we from having
It is. We've studied it to the point where we've come up with a transportation cost of about $1,008,000 increase for the 18 buses that it would take. So our next steps in that are to analyze, how, try to tweak the start and end time so that we could get the transportation cost to be a little bit more manageable. Go back to our parent groups where some of these conversations have been happening and see what's more palatable to them. We have had a little bit of concern from families and from staff, and that by adjusting, for instance, the high school start time, I think we're looking at starting that at, say, 8:45, 8:50 in the morning. The end time then at the end of the day is after 4 p.m. And so what, impact are we going to have on a student's ability to get a job and go to work? What impact are we going to have on athletics and activities? And then what impact does that then have on childcare, for instance, for those high school kids who are watching younger brothers and sisters? And then the other part of that is when do you begin the transportation at the elementary level? If we're asking kids to be out waiting for a bus at 6:30 in the morning, is that too early for little kids? We're hearing from parents. So we do have some things that we need to massage in there in order to make that go forward and to come back with a little bit more practical of a plan, but it is still something in the works.
Okay, so jumping into some of the data, again, one of the career ready indicators was a benchmark of 90% attendance. And as we looked at the 18-19 senior class, so last year's graduates, they had a rate of 83%. As of right now, with as of the end of last month, with our current senior class, we're at 88% attendance. So nice increase there for now. And then the other piece is 25 hours of community service, again, over the course of a student's high school career. At this point, that's all self-reported. We do it through a survey at the end of the year, and we have not really put parameters around the definition of what community service might be. So that could be a little bit based up to the student's interpretation. But we had a rate of 39.7% of last year's senior class reporting that they participated in 25 hours of community service. And we'll do that survey again at the end of the year and then be able to report an updated number for this year's group next fall.
Moving on to workplace learning experience, I really would like to refer to it as career-based learning. These are formal credit-bearing opportunities that our students have to basically try out a career for their first time. It's more formal than a job shadow, so it includes our youth apprentice, co-op, and internship programs, and it spans from business, tech ed, family and consumer science, health science, computer science, pretty much any industry, we capture it. Last year, we had 19% of our senior class participate in that. Typically, they are seniors, but it could encompass junior year as well. This year, we're sitting at about 16%. Although that number doesn't seem high, I want to remind everyone that our district is drastically larger than some of our neighbors. So just a great example is we have 77 youth apprentices. In our consortium, they're looking to hit 364, so we're almost 20% of that. So it's a pretty large number of our actual population, even though the percentage might look a little low. As far as industry credentials, our list keeps growing, so I'm not going to read them all to you, but this year alone, we've added 3 new industry certifications, and next year we're adding another. These are all recognized credentials by the DPI and are part of the Tech Incentive Act 59 grant. So that doesn't include things like a driver's license, which technically is an industry credential for some industries, or OSHA 10. These are things that require a large amount of training in a classroom setting and that are applied on the job. Last year, our senior class, 61 students earned over 70 credentials. This year, we're already sitting at over 75 students who've already earned 1 or more credentials. So it's a growing a trend. We're getting our students' resumes built up and ready to go with really applicable skills. Dual credit and college credit is any student that is earning college level credit with us in our facility or at WCTC or partnering institutions. So it could include transcripted credit, advanced standing, dual enrollment, start college now, early college credit. I think that's it. This is something awesome that our students, I've talked about it before, that they're getting a really big head start, an open door to college level classes. 57% of our students last year's graduating class took at least one over their 4-year span. And Jody already mentioned this, but $350,000 of tuition that we can take care of for our families is just an amazing piece, right? And more importantly, it's getting them classes in these pathways that they're thinking about considering and getting the fast track on that.
So seal of biliteracy, you're familiar with that. I know Dee has been here to talk about that before. We've had 137 total graduates between 2017 and 2019 participating in seal of biliteracy and or the State of Wisconsin Global Scholars. And then 2 or more co-curricular activities. We're starting to streamline this a little bit more so it's less self-reported, more captured by the schools and Infinite Campus so that we can track that. But last year's group was self-reported, and 38% of graduating seniors reported that they participated in 2 or more co-curricular activities while they were in high school. And let's see, again, just a reminder that this is baseline data. Our goal is not to be 100% in all of these areas at this point, and our focus is really on those industry, college, and community connections whenever we can make those, including rigorous coursework we have here and other opportunities that Molly's spoken about, whatever, to help prepare the student for whatever it is they're ready to go on to next. Go ahead.
We also, and we can come back with any questions, but we have sort of put 2 presentations together in one. There was a request made by board member Mr. O'Brien last month around advanced placement data, and specifically how we're looking at our opportunity gaps, and certainly fill in the gaps per your request. But we wanted to take a look at some advanced placement data. We have brought it to you before, but we're going to bring it to you today with a new look. And Equal Opportunity Schools is the research that Mr. O'Brien was doing some work around, and I don't want to speak for you. You can certainly speak to that. So if you go to the next slide, I'll let Amy go over this. This is trends that you've seen before. These aren't necessarily new numbers for you.
Yeah, I would just put these in here just as a refresher, because I know I'm up here all the time throwing a lot of numbers at you. But I think it was the first day of school or the first week of school that we shared some AP trend data, advanced placement trend data of the number of students enrolled in one or more classes and the number of students who'd taken the exam and the percentage of students who had gotten a 3 or higher. So that's just some refresh there on data that you have seen before. Then we started to break it down in a little bit of a different way, and I'll give credit where credit is due. This was some of Dan Keyser's work that he did based on the equal opportunity schools that he has worked with before. So we took a look at students who were enrolled in advanced placement classes in our 3 brick and mortar high schools. So as of the end of February. So these numbers aren't going to exactly match what you saw on the previous slide because it's 6 months later. We've had some kids change classes. We've excluded eAchieve students from these numbers for just illustration purposes at this point. But we disaggregated the data by race, ethnicity group, and also socioeconomic status, and start to look at our representation in our AP courses. So if you see on the far left, the orange bar, it shows 991 students who are white and of medium or high income are enrolled in our advanced placement classes currently this year. And so that represents that's the largest group across all of those demographic groups. And it represents 42% of all of the students in AP classes. So, 42% of the population. Let me make sure I get that correct. 42% of the population. So then we have 67 students who are white and of low income who are also enrolled in AP classes. And you can see across those numbers in the bars are raw numbers of students.
X is a 991. Is 42% of the white population?
Yeah. Yes.
In that demographic group.
In that demographic group.
It's
So
not
42%.
It's not of the total.
No, I'm sorry.
In that economic demographic group. So
Yes.
Yes.
So 42%, 991 is 42% of that population. I'm sorry, Miss.
Of that orange bar?
Yes.
If it was a total?
Yes,
Yeah,
if it was
okay.
if we were looking at all the kids, 42% of them are enrolled in advanced placement classes.
Okay.
So that's our largest group. So that's our bar.
Right.
So we want to look and see what it's going to take to get every subgroup at that 42%.
Let's just be clear. And thanks for sending out this beforehand because it gave me a little idea of what was going to be presented, which is helpful, especially since Dan's not here right now. But if I got this correct, the 991 is 40% of white students in that economic group.
Correct.
Okay. So the discrepancy that we're seeing is that if they're in the lower socioeconomic group, it's around 14% of those eligible students in the white group is taking AP courses. So that's quite a disparity on a socioeconomic basis. Whereas you look at Hispanic, Latino, it doesn't really matter. They seem to both be hitting very high percentages regardless of economic status, which is supposedly the way the world works, except for the U.S., right? So that's actually quite good for the Hispanic Latino community to have such a good, consistent application. But on the other racial demographics, it's not quite as positive in terms of socioeconomic differences. And I believe the white is the worst of the two in the split.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and flip it to the next slide. So if we draw that 42% as our benchmark that we want to meet, and then we start looking at the actual number of students that it would take to get every group, we can see where our work is. And those are actual numbers of students.
So these two slides together really paint the picture of what we're doing and what would it take to get to some sort of benchmark for that common socioeconomic group.
Correct.
And that's kind of what the concern is, I guess, that people are trying to address. How do we get how do we make sure that all economic groups have the opportunity to be in AP courses, or prepared to be in AP courses?
Correct.
Yeah, and I'll just add,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, there's always a tricky part. This is a choice on the student's part,
Correct.
right? But how do we help promote it? How do we help educate those students, make sure that they understand those opportunities? But you can't make someone do something.
Well, it's sometimes we create these choices. So let's say it's instead of we said to a child, you know, your social economic status is such that we're going to take care of the fees, I think, which is a later suggestion. That would be positive, but in a way that'd also be negative, because you're kind of taking it from a point of view that, you know, some families and children don't want to be seen as that way. So I think a better way of doing it is saying, take your social economic group and doing an assessment and having them receive a recommendation letter from the district that they proceed to get a recommendation from one of their educators, teachers, to qualify for the exemption. So it doesn't just become a straight giveaway, but it becomes something that there actually engages our staff and engages the student and the families in trying to achieve that marker, rather than just the idea that you're going to be treated differently than others. Is if we can somehow handle it in a more positive way, I think it can engage our staff and the families at an earlier age where they're more prepared for reaching for that goal if that's what they want. We want them to reach for that goal. That's our stated objective as a district, is to have students reaching for that goal. And if it takes a little bit of extra effort for the social economic status to get there, which I think it does, then we have to figure out how to do that in the most positive way possible.
So yeah, so this piece is just a first look. I think, you know, Dan and I will be looking at this individual schools, et cetera. And I know, you know, for example, schools are already looking at this in different ways. I sat in on a great presentation from South High School at our Waukesha 1 conference talking about what they were looking at related to AP enrollment. And so that was coming from the teacher level, which was really exciting. So yeah, next slide. Some actions that are already in place. We do cover the cost of exams for anyone who qualifies for free and reduced lunch. We have removed prerequisite courses as much as we possibly can. You'll also remember that I think now it's been 2 years ago, maybe 3, that we changed the policy, or the board changed the policy to no longer require that AP students have to take the exam, that's a choice. We've eliminated or at least minimize summer assignments for students. We have schools asking students to identify a stretch class through the enrollment process. What course are you going to take this year that's really going to stretch kind of expand your horizons, you know, kind of stretch your experience and challenge you a little bit. And for many students, that's an AP class. I've talked before about the data analysis work that we've done with our high school principals and how each school developed an action plan around AP, and we'll continue that process. Continuing to challenge adult mindsets and helping continue to see that every student can be an AP student, and that's certainly a focus on AVID. So those things continue, are in various stages of action right now, and we'll continue to move as we move forward. So.
Stretch class? That doesn't have to be an AP
doesn't have to
class
be.
because we have students that could be stretched without going, okay.
Absolutely. No, it's not an AP requirement, but I think it's, as I look at that list of students and what class they indicated was a stretch, many of them do. That's an AP as a stretch, but it does not have to be, no.
So I think the most positive thing about these slides, if our Latino community can do it, so can everybody else, right?
Yeah.
We should be able to hit that 42% goal. It might take extra work on our part as a district, but the Latino group's doing it without any extra work on our part as a district, so we should be able to get it for everybody else since they're demonstrating that it can be done, right? At a high level, and there's high numbers in our Latino community, so.
Have any other questions
Mr.
for
Como.
us?
So, do we share these indicators with our students, and if so, how?
Good. Goodness, that's a great question.
With our career ready indicators?
Or,
You know,
or is this, I know we're collecting data for ourselves and
Yeah.
we have our goals, but
It's a
how do we
good-
talk to the students about this?
I immediately think about our ACP, our academic and career planning processes at the high school level, but I tell you, I appreciate you asking that question, Mr. Como, because I say over and over, I just said it yesterday in a situation, we continue to underutilize student voice and ownership in many ways. The adults around the tables sit here and talk about the academic percentages and the career ready percentages. But the people that control it are absolutely our students. So although we do have some structures in place to engage in those conversations, like I said, through ACP, are you thinking of any others?
I'm thinking about the many conversations that take place with guidance counselors and,
Goal
and
setting
teachers around goal
processes
setting,
through Avid.
course planning, attendance concerns, all of those kinds of things. So I'm not sure that maybe there's a formal structure. There are some formal structures, but as far as saying, here's our district list of career, I don't think we're at that point, but we're definitely, there are things happening in different levels and different structures around our district.
And I think it would benefit our families as we communicate about ACP. Typically twice a year, we actually have a letter ready to go out pretty much this week where we could add in some information about the research behind these and why it might be important to keep that on the family's radar.
Appreciate that.
Brian.
And, when you think about the participation in our Latin group, Latino group is, maybe there's a connection between our dual language program and the fact that we have such a broad-based participation. Maybe that's a positive development from our dual language that we have in the district, that everyone, regardless of social economic status, seems to be doing well within that group. So I guess I'll put a check mark positive up for the dual language program at the district.
Yeah.
Saw that, Dee.
Run with it.
There we go.
Yeah. There's a definite connection between seal of biliteracy and AP participation. That group, definitely.
Anything else for Amy and Molly?
Appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and extra efforts and certainly being here tonight.
Yeah, we'll bring Dan back to punish him.
Thank you. Yes.
They're good slides, so thank him for the slides.
We are moving into, at this time, other business. Any recommendations from any committee members for future meetings? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned. I want to send out a special thank you to all of our administrators for once again being at not only this meeting, but every meeting. I really appreciate you being here and listening to us and taking that feedback back to those that you work with. And also a special shout out for Stacy McCoy for the great job that she does behind the scenes, before and after meetings and in between. So
Molly's cookies.
and Molly's cookies.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was 3-4 months late, but.
there we go.
They're 3-4 months old, you said?
That's how old they are? Wow. They're still pretty fresh.
They're good.
I thought they were seasoned.
Our next Teaching and Learning Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 7th, 2020, 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.